Okay, hi everyone. I'm Lindsay O'Neill. If you don't know me, I'm a full time faculty in the MSIDT program, and I love storyline in particular. So I'm doing a few webinars for MSIDT related to storyline. Today, I'm presenting my own storyline design hacks. I'm focusing on using layers, using master slides, and what I call Trompe effects. Um, there's always more than I want to be able to share with you than I am able to fit into a 1 hour webinar. But if you have questions as we go through, please pop in and ask them. If you have some particular problem you want to solve, let me know. Maybe we can solve it in this hour. Um, as we go, as always, please feel free to drop into the chat box if you have a question, or feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. I am very happy to answer questions as we go along. Okay, the bottom of the slide here, I've got the URL for the PowerPoint practice file. Let me go ahead and drop that into the chat box. I should have copied it before I started recording, but I did not. BF 9UY. Let me double check that before I hit enter. 922 PF9UY. Okay, I put the URL into the chat box for downloading the PowerPoint and the practice file. You'll see it again at the end of this presentation. You're not obligated to download either of those now or in the future, but they're there if you want them. If you're interested in seeing the recording of this, just send me an email and I will send you the link to that. I'll put my email in the chat box as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and quickly just dive in. I don't have much in the way of a PowerPoint. I'm really interested in just diving into our demo, showing you what I have, and then we'll talk about how I made it happen. And of course, I did not open it, so let's open it this way. Okay, so I'll leave PowerPoint open in the background so that the subtitles keep on doing their thing. Um, do not judge this tutorial on the strength of its efficacy as an instructional experience. I just threw it together really quick for this presentation. Um, but I've got some design hacks in here that I'll show you how I got them done. So let's go. This is the title slide. I've got a menu here. I didn't bother fleshing out the get help item yet, but I got 3 items here on screen. So the user can choose from any of these. The idea for this is that if you're a new online student, this tutorial would be a good way to get familiar with how to be successful as an online student. Okay, so I've got custom navigation. You can see I've got the player turned off and I've got my own buttons on screen. I've got a series of template slides. They vary from slide to slide, but I've got, I think, 4 or 5 laid out slides that I reuse throughout this tutorial. I've got some click to reveals. This doesn't look perfect here, unfortunately, but you can see I've got a 4 item click to reveal here with animations that makes it look pretty fancy. And here on the last slide of this module, if you hit the menu button, I've got a message that comes up that says section complete before it sends you back to the menu. And then of course I've got the states change. Once you have visited something, it changes. I got one more section here to show you right quick. Similar organization and layout in this section. I've got a different kind of click to reveal here. I call this more of a carousel click to reveal. You can use the arrows to go back and forth. Notice that the user is not forced to go through this to move on to the next slide. It's optional, but we can talk about how to. Thank you, Marie. Ooh, I like the commentary. But we can talk about how you could force the user to view all these items before they move on. Thank you. I'm very proud of this one. I think it's pretty fancy. And then what I'm most proud of in this tutorial is I actually pulled this out of a very old storyline project I did ages ago. I've got a custom menu that pops up when you tap the hamburger icon. So this is on every single slide. You tap the icon, it opens. You can jump anywhere in the project, including back to the main menu. If you tap it again, it closes. All right, I think that's pretty much it. And then the last thing that I have that I wanted to show you is I got a credits button. This is a custom button I put in the player. And oh no, that looks crappy. It looked nice last time I looked at it. My heading broke, but that's okay. I've got a slide that pops up. This is called a light box slide that has credits. I get asked pretty often how to put in a credit slide. This is one way you could do it. There's many ways you can do it. I like to have the credit slide available usually from like the title slide, or it could be a conclusion slide. But anyways, that's one way you can get that done. Okay, so let us dive into the how to do it. Oh wait, let me actually, I've got an introductory slide in my PowerPoint. Yep, did that. Okay, I've got this presentation roughly broken out into layers, master slides, and more hacks called Trompe. Please forgive my atrocious French pronunciation, I'm sure. But let's talk really quick about layers. So I'm hoping that most of you here have basic storyline skills, or if not, that's totally fine. Some of what I'm saying you'll have to maybe try out in the software to get it. But if you're not familiar with layers, layers are what makes storyline special, and they give it a big edge over Captivate. Captivate does not have layers. So on each slide you have in your project, you can add layers to it, just like to a cake. And they can be clear layers or they can be opaque layers. So you can see what's below or not. They are wonderful for adding effects or further content to slides. I use layers to create the click to reveals and the carousel. I'll show you how I did that. They're a convenient way to organize content, again, as click to reveals or as like a carousel kind of situation. You can use either objects on the base slide that have triggers to make the layers show, or you can have the layers show automatically. You can set the layers themselves to show or hide other layers when they come up. You have a lot of options. And again, yeah, they let you hide other layers or not. It's probably the best thing about storyline is the layers, and they are very, very customizable, and they can allow you to do some really interesting things. Okay, so let's pop over to storyline. So this is the behind the scenes view of my project. If you came to my last webinar, you'll probably recognize I've got a whole scene called style guide. But let me just kind of start from the basics here in case you did not come to my last webinar. I try to be organized when I create a project, especially if it's going to have multiple sections or it's going to be complex in any ways. I like to use Storyline's scene feature, which takes your slides and organizes them into groups, basically. It's kind of like grouping your slides together. And if you do use scenes, it's really nice because you can set up triggers to jump to a scene rather than a specific slide, so that if you change the order of the slides in a specific scene, it doesn't matter. That link will still work and you won't be jumping into the middle of a group of slides, for example. Okay, so one of my scenes is a style guide. I'll maybe look a little bit more at that later. These are kind of like, it's something that the user never sees, but behind the scenes, it's where I keep. Oh, I'll just go ahead and dive in. It's where I keep all the stuff that I reuse the most. So these colors actually got screwed up. I had a different color palette here. I don't know why it reverted back to these colors. I'm having all sorts of technical issues today, I suppose. But I've got I put my color palette on the first slide. I put the fonts that I choose to use. I put examples of buttons, and I make sure that the states are the way I want them in those buttons. So I can always just copy and paste the buttons. I have examples of slides that I use, including like the title slides. Once I create something that's really labor intensive, like a click to reveal slide, this is the one that I just showed you, as the 4 items that when you click it, each one pops up. I like to copy it and put it into this scene, so it's an easy reference for me to copy and paste and use this slide again. So I guess this is design hack number one. Behind the scenes, the user has no idea what other stuff is in your project, and if you were concerned about project size, you could always just delete this before you publish it. But I like to have a scene where I keep all the goodies that I reuse over and over as I'm building out the rest of this project. It's easy to have a reference where I can just refer to the colors. I can say, I wanted that button. Where did that button go? I can go just pop into here, copy and paste the button. Once I create something that's really labor intensive, like the clicked reveals, I'll make a copy and put it into this scene. Or like this carousel, I'll put it into this one also. I redid the carousel when I was working on this, so hopefully I put the most recent version into here. And that is basically it. Okay, so let me see here. Um, so let's go back to the story view and we'll start on the menu slide. So title slide's just a regular old title slide. Menu slide, I do have a layer here. And this is the first visit layer. A lot of the times a developer wants to uh, have something happen only on the user's first visit. It might be a voiceover, it might be some guiding text, it could be help text. You could always have like a help slide that comes before the menu slide or another slide that has all that content before you get to the menu. But sometimes it's just really nice to have the menu slide have everything on it, including a first visit option. So I added a layer called first visit where it just has an arrow and it says start here. And you can see that the base slide is grayed out because this is a layer that lays over the base slide. All right, I see I had a question in the chat box here. Carol says, where do the scene slides reside in the project? In the story view of Storyline, you can see how all of the slides are related. You have the what is it called? The starting scene. If you dive into Storyline, it automatically creates a scene for you where everything's in the same scene. It's all in one group, but you can create more scenes than that to further organize your content. You can see the hierarchy of how my content is laid out. You can see that I've got the main starting scene here, and these are my 3 modules below it: get ready, get organized, get help. And then the style guide scene is just kind of off to the side here. It's got some arrows pointing to the other scenes you probably can't see, mostly because of copy and pasted content there that has buttons that points to those things, but otherwise the user never sees it. It lives in here, the user never sees it. And I got my credit slides just kind of hanging out way over here. And you'll see the credit slide doesn't actually have any links to anything else because I've only got it as a light box. All right, let's go back in. All right. So the slides are just in there. They're where they would always be. They're always in a scene, but you can choose to organize your scenes any way you want to, basically. And then it kind of shows you how it's laid out. Okay. So first visit slide. How I have this work, and I like to say when you use Storyline or Captivate, there's a million different ways to get the same effect. There's different ways you can do it. All of my design hacks are just ways that I do things. There's probably better ways. There's definitely different ways. If you have other ways, please feel free to chime in as well. How I have this set up is that I put in a trigger here that says show layer first visit when the timeline starts on this slide. And then I have the layer called first visit, and you'll see in the timeline that it's only 3.5 seconds long. I pushed it back just a little bit so once the user gets to the menu, they have a moment to kind of look at it before this thing pops up, and then it directs the eye to where we'd like them to go. And I've got animations set up as well for both the start here and the arrow. They grow and then they shrink. And how I have this slide set up is that I've set it to hide slide layer when timeline finishes. So down here in the corner, when you're on each layer, you can click the little gear button and pull up the settings. And these are actually really powerful settings because they can make things work very differently. It always defaults to hide other slide layers. It's a great thing to default to. Sometimes you don't want it to. You can also choose to hide objects on base layer. If you click that, you'll notice that everything on the base layer actually just disappeared. So that might be another way to make it feel like a whole new slide, even when you're still on the same slide. And I checked hide slide layer when timeline finishes. So it's only 3.5 seconds long. As soon as this slide, oh, did I freeze? I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. Yeah, Brent says the audio is spotty. What was the last thing that you heard me say? Darn Wi-Fi. Remember I said the Wi-Fi might fail and it did. Give me a comment in the chat box if you can hear me. It's okay. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, please, if my Wi-Fi goes out or I get spotty, please put that into the chat. All right, thanks, Brenton. No, it's me. I don't know why the Wi-Fi likes to go out when it's really important in our house. If it's not important, it'll work very well. Okay. Okay, so I think I was saying I have this checked to hide slide layer when timeline finishes. This isn't a default option. I went in here and turned this on. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? The layer just hides when the timeline finishes. You have additional options here as well. You could prevent the user from clicking on the base layer, so I could make them like look at the arrow and then not let them do anything else until the arrow goes away or the slide layer goes away. You can pause the timeline of the base layer. There's a lot of creative things you can do with these layer options. I won't go too deep into them today, but again, oh, losing me again. Oh, Wi-Fi. Why? No, back good. Oh, geez, Louise. All right. To recap, even PowerPoint's mad at me. Subtitles aren't available right now because the internet connection is slow. All right. Anyways, long story short, the slide layer properties box is really powerful. You can get really creative in how you use it, and I highly recommend you to play around with it. Okay, so that's my first example of a slide layer. Um, Now, this is the way that I set it up for a first visit layer. The first visit layer is 3.5 seconds long. I don't know if you can spot the issue, but potentially if a user gets to this menu slide, the first visit thing pops up and the user, oh, shut down my video. Good point, Teresa. Thank you. I forgot that the video really increases bandwidth. Thanks, Teresa, for that tip. All right, hopefully that works a little bit better and my stupid internet doesn't crash. Let's all cross our fingers. Okay. Anyways, so this is how I have the first visit layer set up, but it could be if the user got here, they saw the first visit thing, and then they immediately click on something and they go into a module, the first visit thing will actually still be here when they get back because the timeline hasn't completed yet on the slide layer. Let me actually show you what that would look like. Oh, it's already better. Good. Thank you, Teresa. This is why this is why I need smart people around me to remind me of these things. Intellectually I knew that the video could bog down, but I always forget when I'm in the moment. Okay, let me replay this because I was talking. All right. Oh, this didn't work, so I preview this slide. But in any case, if you click something before the slide layer actually hides, when they come back to the menu, they'll actually still see that. So if you were concerned about that, it's more of an aesthetic thing. I don't really care that much if the user clicks on the module and the slide layer is still here when they come back because it didn't actually make it to 3.5 seconds to close. If that bothers you, you can always put in a trigger that will hide first visit when the timeline starts if, for instance, the objects like get help, get ready, any of these were set to visited. So if you'd probably have to do one for each of these right here. If the state of get ready was visited, if the state of get organized was visited. Anyways, you'd have to play with that, but there are options that are pretty simple to put in a trigger here as well. So if the user had already come here and if any of these was visited, then that layer would close. Anyways, all right, let's go ahead and move along. Let me take a sip of my coffee here. Okay, let's pop over to get ready. Okay, so this slide is my click to reveal slide. Let's just quickly revisit it here. These are each buttons. When you click on it, it slides out and it makes a fancy little content box here. Each of these is the same. It looks a little bit nicer in the preview than it did in real life. I actually had to do a little bit of hacking to the click to reveal slides to make them work with the main menu. The main menu that pops out here is actually two layers that are on the, of course now it's not coming back, are on the master slide. I'll get to master slides in just a moment here. But if you have layers on your master slide and you also have layers on your base slide, it can get a little bit funky pretty quickly. But let me show you quickly how I put this together. So of course, each of these items that reveals is a separate layer. I've got 4 layers here, and this is the base slide. So of course, the base slide, there's no content here, it's just the buttons. each of these buttons is set to reveal its respective layer. I was feeling clever and I named them each by their color so it'd be really clear which referred to which. And also, when I reuse this slide, since they have the colors listed, it makes it easier for me just to quickly correspond or figure out which goes to which. Okay, so again, when I click on the layer, the base slide blurs out, except for the top and bottom, probably because that's master slide bits. What I have here is I've got a tiny little square right here, and this is all different content over here. So whenever I do anything in Storyline, I mostly just use a wide variety of shapes to make the illusion that I'm looking for. This is kind of one of my fool the eye tricks here. Um, I knew that I knew I wanted the button to kind of like extend out fluidly and kind of flow into this bigger content box. And how I did that was by making one little shape right here next to the button. And you can see they're all kind of staggered here in the timeline. And I added the same animation to all of them. So if you want that kind of extending effect, you can use wipe. And of course, you just choose from the left. You want it to move from left to right. And so it'll wipe, and then as soon as the animation on this one finishes, the main colored box here animates in as well. So this has the same animation wipe from left, and you can see that it's a little bit staggered after the first rectangle so that it makes that fluid motion. So you can actually see this actually starts at 0.75 because the animation for this rectangle is also 0.75. So thank you, Marie. I'm enjoying your commentary. Yeah, this is when I kind of conceived of this webinar. I was thinking I do all these hacky things. Like the user doesn't know what's happening on your slide. That's my number one takeaway for you today. The user has no idea how you made your slide work. They just see the final effect. So you can hack away. You can do whatever you want in this slide, and they'll never know. They'll just be wowed by how fancy it looks. Thanks, Marie. And then the actual content box, I just put a white box with the text in it, and that appears 0.75 after the rectangle. And I don't think I just had this one appear. I didn't do any further animations. So it's the same thing for each of these. It's just a shape, another shape. I had to do some more hacks with this slide to get it to work with the master slide layers, but just one more time to show you how it works. Now that you know the secret behind this slide, you click on the button, it extends out. It's just shapes and animations. Thanks, Carol. Yeah, it's very gratifying when you get things to look very fancy and it's just it's just shapes and animations in the background. All right, so I mean, once I had this one built out, I think I turned it into like a two item. I mean, you can just delete the other two buttons if you don't want them, and then move these around to turn into a two item. Mandy, I missed the white box. Is that just a text box within this shape? I don't know if I actually ever use text boxes. I mostly just use shapes. Yeah, this is just actually just a shape. It's actually just a white filled shape with no outline. Any shape that you put into storyline, you can put text into. You can just, pop it in. Let me see. And you just start typing once you double click on the shape and then it just appears. So I pretty much no, that's not true. I use text boxes. I've used a lot of text boxes in this, but I do tend to kind of just use shapes by default. A lot of the time, just put my text into them. Okay, so let's pop over to the carousel one that I did. So this one's a little bit funky. So again, maybe I should have started this presentation with master slides because I have the menu on the master slide. Um, it interferes with the layers on my base slide here. So I had to get a little bit funky with how I did this. Brenton, is there a way to make pill shapes like for buttons? Yeah, I mean, you can make whatever shape that you want to, and any shape you can use as a button. I'm trying to think if you wanted to make a pill shape. So sometimes the shapes have like a little thing you can drag to change the actual shape of it. I'm trying to see if there's any other pill shaped items here. You'd have to browse. Maybe I'll do something like this. Yeah, but it's not quite. Oh, yeah, that actually is pill shape. So this is the rounded rectangle thing. So another hack is when you insert a shape, a lot of the time it has this little tiny yellow handle, and you can change how rounded or not a shape is. So if you want to do a pill, hey, there's a pill. And this is a whole nother webinar, but if you use PowerPoint, you can actually combine shapes and merge them permanently to make whatever shape that you wanted to. Yeah. That's a whole nother webinar. I've actually gone to entire workshops on how to use PowerPoint as graphics editors. I know the graphic designers in the audience are crying a little bit at that statement, but I don't use what is it? Not PowerPoint, Photoshop very much. So I use what's really handy. Anyways, yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to use Illustrator. It takes too many brain cells, and I just don't use graphic design software enough. I've taken graphic design classes, but anyways, I'm just rambling now. Okay, carousel. Carousel is the same principle as the click to reveal. On the base slide, I've got a base shape with the color and kind of like the little screen here, like for a movie theater. And I've got 3 empty dots here. Um, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lucy and Teresa. Uh, again, the setup here is funky because I really wanted this to work with my menu. But what I did was on each slide layer, this is where I did use a text caption. I put it on here. And what I did was, let me just go ahead and zoom in here. I wanted that same effect you see with any photo carousel you pretty much see on any website where it kind of tells you which item you're on. It gives you that sense of place. And that's why it's called a carousel. It's like a thing that like spins around, right? Even though this is a manual carousel. I wanted that sense of place where you were in the carousel. So I wanted the 3 dots to represent each of the 3 items here. And I wanted you to know where you were. So all I did was I took one of the original dots here and all I did was I just put in a dark colored fill and I changed the outline to white. So that's just a dot that overlays. What's really nice about Storyline is that when you add shapes, to a layer, it'll help you line up with whatever is underneath as well. So I do have actually all this content copy and pasted here as well. But that's the secret to my carousel is again shapes. Again, the user doesn't know how you're making an effect happen. To them, they're not putting any thought into how this works. Maybe they think it's something organic that was programmed. It's not. It's just shapes. So when you go to each layer, I just put in that little shape to say where it is. I put in the arrows on each layer, and then it gives you that sense of place as you go through. And then of course I took out the if an arrow didn't apply, then I just took it out. So that's how I did that one. Let me see. I think that was most of what I wanted to show you about my layers. I've got one more I'll show you in master slides. We'll move on to master slides in just a moment. Do you have any questions or comments at this point?
I wanted to know, this is Marie, I wanted to
Mhm.
know when you're exporting from PowerPoint, and I'm not even sure if you can export is it PNGs or JPEGs?
Mhm.
Do both come up in Art and Storyline?
I think so.
And in the PNGs would probably have a transparent background, right?
Um,
Maybe. Okay.
yes. It's been a little while since I have. Yeah, you can put these things into PowerPoint. You right click, save as picture, and you can choose what format you want. So if we did a
Okay.
PNG, let's see, let's find out where it's actually going to save it. I don't love Windows. It just kind of puts your stuff in OneDrive, and I
That's
resent it.
why I'm just a newbie at this Articulate Storyline, because I love my Mac.
Yeah, yeah, my Mac died. I dumped water in my Mac, and I'm still mourning its loss. It's 9 years old, but I wanted to go out on my own terms. All right, so let's drop in that shape I just made. We'll see if it's oh yeah, seems to be transparent. Yep, it's transparent. So if you export if you do a save picture from PowerPoint as a PNG, yes, it'll be transparent. And again, if you are savvy with PowerPoint, you can combine shapes and make all sorts of different things. Oh, one more fun fact since we are here and we're talking about PowerPoint as a non-graphic designer's what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say. Graphic design software. I got one more trick to show you. We'll see if this works. My internet connection is pretty crappy. Fun fact, if you insert a character into Storyline, I'm just copying him here. I'm going to put him into PowerPoint. Let's see, where's my new, I just want a new slide. Here we go. Let's delete that. You can put this guy into PowerPoint. Now this is on the spot, and haven't actually tried this in a while. You right click on him, and oh no, it doesn't have the ungroup. Might be a save as thing. Anyways, there's a way, and I'm totally getting off track here. You can take the characters and you can put them into PowerPoint, and there's a way that you can ungroup them. Again, these are for people that aren't graphic designers that are using PowerPoint. You could also just export these characters into like Illustrator. You can ungroup them, take them apart, and what you find out is these characters are actually just, a series of shapes, which is, the secret to SVG images generally that are created with Illustrator and other places. So that's something you can Google that, I would suppose. How to turn a PowerPoint or a storyline character into a series of shapes and customize them. It's pretty easy. I haven't done it in ages, so of course on the fly I'm not able to do it. But let's go ahead and move along. Needs to be an SVGS or EPS. Yeah, there. I maybe have to like save as or something and then put it into PowerPoint. Copying and pasting was clearly not the way to go. Okay, let's move on to master slides. I guess PowerPoint's being agreeable with my subtitles again. Okay, master slides are incredible. Storyline has master slides and PowerPoint has master slides. It's the coolest feature that pretty much no one knows about. I just realized I need to see what time it is really fast. I talk too much. Okay, let's move along. Master slides are great because you can change the look of all your slides at once. Yeah, Captivate does too. They are clunky. Master slides are great because you can add your navigation. If you have custom navigation only once, it'll show up on all your slides. Some design elements can give you trouble on your base slide. I probably won't dive into that. Oops. So let's quickly look at master slides. Okay, master slides are amazing. Let's delete this guy. So if we go to view here on the top and click on slide master, it'll show you your master slide. So this is the master slide I was using. Um, by default, any slide template you use in Storyline is a master slide. Whenever you do like a new slide and then you choose what layout you want, that's a master slide. And if you want to customize it, all you have to do is either choose the main master slide. This is the one at the top here is a little bit bigger. If you put something here, it affects all these sub master slides. Okay, so you can edit the main master slide. Maybe if you have like a corporate logo or something or a background image you want on every single slide, you can put on the main one. Or if you want to, you can take it off and you could put it just on a sub slide and then only appear on that one slide. So what's great about this is I took my, let me go back. I took my next and back button here and I put them on my master slide. And so now they are on every single slide in my project. So you can see them here. And you can see that they show up in your slide, but you can't interact with them. Generally, if there's something on your slide you can't interact with, it's because it's on your master slide. And I forget this pretty often. And I'm like, why can't I play with this? And I go, oh, yeah, master slide. Yes, Teresa, you can add a home button on the master as well. These are interactive, but you don't know they're interactive until you go into, preview or you publish it. And then you're able to click on these. And of course, I only preview the slides, so it won't go anywhere, but they show up on your thing. The other thing I have on my master slide is that menu. Let's see. It's a little bit funky how I wanted to put this onto my slides, but you can see here I've got layers on my master slide. So this is where the menu comes from. You can't see it when you're just in regular edit mode on your base slide. You can see I made a space for the hamburger to go here. You can only see the menu in the slide master. And the triggers for this are in the slide master as well. So how I have this set is I want it to show the layer closed menu when the timeline starts. So that's the closed menu. Closed menu is just the hamburger icon. That's it. But I've got a trigger assigned to the hamburger icon. And this is just something I just clip art I got from the internet. It's nothing fancy. Or actually, maybe I made it with shapes. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I've got a trigger assigned to this to show layer open menu when the user clicks this. And again, I like to be detailed and name my objects, because when you name your objects in the timeline, you can actually just double click here to name stuff. It makes it easier to do the triggers later on when you're looking for, if it's a busy slide, it makes it easier to find what you're looking for. And then on my open menu, the most important trigger that I have, and this is a big hack, is you just pause the timeline on this layer when the timeline reaches whatever you want. And the idea is to make this collapse again, the user just clicks on this it'll resume the timeline and it'll allow all of this to collapse. So I have animation set up for it to go out, it pauses. When the user clicks on this, resumes and it collapses again. Carol, if you reprogram the button to jump to a different slide, can you customize it in the project? No, you can only change things from the master slide. Anything in the master slide, you can only change in the master slide. So sometimes that means you want all of your slides to have a similar look, but maybe you don't want this menu in every single slide. There's different ways to add content to your master slides. If I went into the details of how I set up this one, you would probably all wish I would stop talking. You probably already want wish that. Just kidding. There's a lot of different ways to do things, and you're going to figure out what works for you and what works for your project. Um, just to be really clear, too, with master slides, you can make more master slides. You can make all of the master slides. You can make a whole nother set. So we've got set one here that's plain. You got set two here that has a blue banner. You can make set three that has a whole different design. You can go crazy with your master slides and you can customize them however you want. But again, anything interactive you put in the master slide, you can only edit from the master slide. Uh, Let me see. I probably screwed up my project by playing around with these things. But anyways, and if you want your slides to have a similar look, like I made these custom slides here, you can go to insert. Oh, what is it? No, slide master, and you insert a placeholder. And so if I wanted to, like, say, delete these things here, you can see it says click to edit master slide text styles. This you can change the text of. If it's interactive, you can only go to the slide master to change it. But if you insert a placeholder like a text here, this is something that when you use a slide as a template, when you have that new slide and you go to use layout, you can edit this on your base slide. So anything interactive like these little buttons, you can't edit from the base slide, but if it's a placeholder, that's designed so that you can edit, whether it's an image placeholder or a text placeholder. Yes, Teresa, Catchphrase does work the same way. And just so you know, this is also a thing in PowerPoint as well. Just to point this out, because a lot of people tend to have their minds blown by this. You can go to Slide Master, and if there's something you want on every single slide in PowerPoint, you can do that in here as well. Like say, oh, I think this square is awesome. And then you close the master view, you can see that same square is on every single slide now. So close the view. Okay, go back to my presentation there. Okay. Time check. Okay, talking a lot here. So master slides are wonderful, and what they save you from is having to copy and paste the same thing onto every single slide in your project. And then after you do that, you realize, I want to make a change. I want to make this, text bigger. I want to make it smaller. I don't like the font. I want to change the colors. You can do that really quickly. Oops, I'm clicking too many things. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for master slides. You can go crazy with these. Again, super customizable. They are a very big, amazing time saver. Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay. If you do, pop them in the chat box. Okay, last section of my webinar here. Trompe. I'm going to talk about buttons and interactive elements. I've already talked about buttons in click to reveal. So talk a little more about editing buttons, making them look like buttons, for example. Oh, I already showed you the custom menu. I got ahead of myself there. I added a custom menu using layers in my master slides. We can go into player settings pretty quickly, show you how you can customize the player and browser background, and then hacks. And again, my biggest takeaway from this webinar today is the user doesn't know what's on the slide or even what layer or slide they're technically on if you have custom navigation. Just keep that in mind, that the user doesn't need to know what slide they're on. They can be any place in the tutorial for all they know. If you have custom navigation and your navigation is working correctly, you can do all sorts of things behind the scenes, and it just seems like a really smooth, flawless experience to your user. So let me go back to let's do the player first. So this is my published version of my orientation in Storyline. You can see it's not completely blended into the background, sort of like a gradient player here, but I changed the color of the browser background and I changed the color of the player and I removed all of the default next and back buttons as well. And furthermore, when you change the size of the browser window, my learning object here changes sizes as well. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I give on student projects is I ask them to make their player bigger or to make it changeable with the size of the browser because the default project size and storyline is it's pretty tiny. It's like this big. And if you have a big monitor or, they use a small font, it can be really hard to see. So, let's go into how to do that in storyline. Okay. So, if you want to change your player options in storyline, it's pretty easy. You go into player. So here you can choose your player style, classic or modern. I found that my clicked reveals looked a little bit different depending on the player that I chose. I'm using Articulate 360, so if you're using Storyline 3, you don't have the option of modern. I like to leave it on classic just because I'm, I'm familiar with it and I know how to edit it to make it look different. To change the color of your player, you can just go into colors and effects. It has some built-in color schemes, but once you choose your color scheme, you can actually show advanced color editing and you can edit each item individually. And there's like, I don't know, probably 100 things in here you can edit. I've got a link, I believe, in my PowerPoint, I can send it to you, where there's actually 3 items in here you have to change the color of to make it blend into the background here. And the background color, you can change the page background. That's why I chose black. I chose the color scheme black, and then I went in here and edited. I think I think it's like border, slide background, and something else. You also have to change to black, so it looks like your player blends in a little bit to the actual background of your browser. Um, and just to be super clear, if you preview your project, you don't see the black background. It only shows up when you actually publish the project and you have it hosted somewhere. So that's it. That's really important to know. And then, so that's how you change the colors. And if you want to make your player expand to fill the browser window, you just go here into other and you change the player size scale player to fit browser window. Now, of course, you can also just change the design size of your project as well. It's actually called story size. If you go to design and then story size, you can change it. And you can see that the default size is really small, 720 pixels by 540 pixels. That's like nothing. Um, so you can change it to a different ratio. You can also go custom and make it really big. I always forget to do this before I start a project. And if you go and you change after the fact, it'll give you the option to. Oh, sometimes it gives you the option of how you want to, if you want to make things bigger or just move them around to fit. But it always ends up looking really funky if you do it after the fact. So if you can remember to do that before, that would be great. Carol, there's not a specific setting to make the project work on phones or tablets. As long as you publish in HTML5, it'll work on phones or tablets. I mean, there's certain things like drag and drops that might be a little bit not so great. Obviously, you can't do a hover like on a tablet. It'll just resize. It won't ever reflow in Storyline. It'll just resize. So if someone's looking at it on their phone, they would have to turn their phone sideways to landscape if they wanted to get the best possible view. I don't think Storyline's interested in making or Articulate's interested in making Storyline more phone or tablet friendly. Instead, they came out with Articulate Rise, which does reflow for different device screens. So if you were designing for something that you need to work on mobile, I would suggest you use something like Rise instead. And if you did use Rise, there are ways to put in little tiny projects from storylines. You could always have something a little bit more fancy as part of the Rise project, but it's a different experience to use Rise. It's not as customizable as Storyline, but the trade-off is it reflows for smaller screens, and that's really nice. Okay. Let's talk quickly about buttons. I'm gonna go into my style guide here. This is part of my Trompe part of my presentation here. Another bit of feedback I give students a lot is to make your buttons or anything that's interactive, it needs to look like it's interactive. Sometimes new developers will take something like text and they're like, I added this trigger. It'll jump to the side when you click this text. And, as the user, you don't know what's clickable unless you try clicking on everything. Generally, the things need to look clickable for a user to click on them. I haven't been able to find any good educational resources on buttons. If any of you have any suggestions, let me know. But my feedback is generally that humans are physical creatures. We look for things that look like we could physically touch them. And that's a good way to make buttons look clickable is to give them some sort of like tactile design. I see another comment here I missed. Oh, Brenton, good point. If it's really important to you that your project looks good on mobile, definitely stop early in your project and make sure test it out on a phone, see how it looks before you move on. Yeah, another reason to use master slides too is you can always make the fonts bigger in one place and make sure they look good on the rest of your project. But yeah, good point. If there's a something you someplace you absolutely have to be able to use your project on, definitely try it out first. Yes. So what I do, again, my buttons are just shapes. I am a simple gal. So I just take a shape, I put in a shape. I always take away the outline. I don't know why there's always an outline. It looks so dated. I change the fill to whatever I want. You can change the text to whatever you want. You can make it bold, you can make it bigger, you can make it whatever. But what I like to do is put on the white background here. Is by itself, I mean, if it says click me, obviously it's like it's kind of a button thing, but your user shouldn't have to read something to figure out if it's clickable or not. In one of my classes, I use the book called Don't Make Me Think, where we talk about how users actually interact with web content. If something doesn't look clickable, they're not going to click on it. So, for instance, if this is the same thing and it didn't have fill, if it had no fill, maybe it has maybe some font or some colored font or something in there, but this doesn't really look like a button to me. Plus, it looks, super tacky since I chose a red font. So what I do is I take a shape and I like to go into format and then shape effect, and you can add a shadow. You can choose your choice of shadow, but instantly, the minute it has a shadow, it looks clickable. And again, this could be data design. It's one thing that I like to do to make my buttons pop out and look really clickable. Another thing that's important is to make all your buttons have kind of a similar feel. Every time a learner goes into a new e-learning, they need to kind of figure out how it works. And one way to figure out how it works is if this looks like something that they can click, it has a shadow, it has rounded corners. Whenever they see something else that looks similar, like this button or this button or this button, they're going to go, oh, that's probably something I can touch and I can click on that too. So it's really important to have some sort of consistent design. And that doesn't mean that everything that's interactive in your project needs to have this look. But if you do have buttons that are kind of serving the same sort of like navigational feature in your project, I would say it's important that they have a consistent look and feel. Marie, yes, flat is in style now. I'm not hip either. If you didn't have the shadow, that's fine. I get stuck on this whole like people are physical people. When you're moving through an e-learning, you tend to keep in your mind note of where you are in an e-learning. You think like, oh, I'm 2 slides this way, I'm 2 slides that way. You're always kind of keeping track of a physical place. One of the reasons, like for instance, ebooks are not as pleasing to read as physical books is it's kind of hard to keep track of mentally where you are in the book. And like if you lose your place in the ebook, like you're screwed, right? It sucks. In a regular book, you can just go right back to it. Um, yeah, Marie. I've had a conversation with someone recently about how flat design is so in right now, but e-learning in general is kind of dated anyway. So maybe just like embrace the tacky and go with it. I take it a step further. I go into my edit states and this one I didn't. I think it's these ones. I did a hover feature where again I went a little crazy with the shadow, and I did like an interior shadow where it when you hover over it has oh, I think it's down. When you click on it, it looks like you're pushing it down into something. Yeah, I know, a little bit dated here, but it adds a nice tactile feature. And if you have different thoughts about how to make buttons clickable, yeah, put them into the chat. Flat design translates way better to a small screen. Absolutely, Teresa. So that's something to keep in mind for mobile. On mobile, I would never ever put shadows on anything. That would be very silly. But on a desktop computer, I kind of feel like when you're doing computer-based training, the expectations are a little bit different. Yeah, it does help with color contrast as well. Okay, so that was my personal rant about buttons. But in any case, I ask you all just to be conscientious on how you design your buttons so they do like look like something that people can click. If you don't want to be tacky like me and use shadows, go for it. If you don't, that's fine. But think about how the user's eye is drawn to these things and how they know if they can interact with it or not. It's a blessing and a curse with Storyline that you can add whatever objects you want to a project. But the curse is that you need to make sure the user knows so that they can play with them if it's something that they can play with. And as you go through other people's e-learnings, people's portfolios, maybe just make a note one day to explore buttons and interactive items and figure out how people know, how you know personally that you can interact with things. If you're on your phone, it's pretty clear. When it comes to these kind of like full screen designs created in Storyline or Captivate, sometimes it gets a little bit murky, and it's pretty common that someone has like a hover feature or something else they don't know about because it didn't look like something you could interact with. Yes, Teresa, if you have a stuff and next and back buttons and use the same stuff the rest of the project, yeah. That's one reason I really advise using consistent design. And how you do that is totally up to you. Okay. Talked about player settings, talked about buttons and interactive elements. I think that's basically it from me showing you how to do stuff that I feel strongly about. Again, big takeaway. I'm just going to keep on reiterating it. The user doesn't know what's on the slide or what layer slide they're technically on. You can use layers, shapes, combination of shapes and layers on all sorts of different kinds of setups to make the effect that you want. And to the user, it's going to feel seamless. But the big catch is you always need to test your projects. This is a big area where you run out of time for a project and you don't leave time for testing. It's really important that you test your projects. If you want to really thoroughly test your projects, have someone try a project and watch them. Ask them to think out loud. Ask them to say like, "Oh, I feel like there should be something to do on this slide, but there's not." That's another good way to figure out if your items look like they're interactive or not, like they're buttons or not. Um, Ask them to work through it, watch them, keep on testing, test it yourself. And every time you make a change and you publish, if you can, I mean, go through it again and make sure it still works. Of course, these are for smaller projects. Bigger projects is going to get a little bit out of control at that point. Um, Sorry, I'm looking at the chat now. All right, having some design chat in the or in the chat. Okay, so that's it from me. Again, I've got the PowerPoint and practice file link here. I will put it back into the chat box. If you have questions, comments, you want to unmute or put it into the chat box, you want to tell us about something you know how to do that you want to share, go for it. Yeah, my understanding that hover doesn't work in mobile, but sometimes I'm surprised by what does work in mobile. Carol, Storyline does. Storyline has the option, I believe, to create template projects. So if you saved your project as a template, you could reuse the project, and if you saved your master slides there, then that would work. I don't know how to do that off the top of my head here. Is there an option? Yes, you can save things as Storyline templates. So if you did have some master slides you're really, really proud of, you could save your project as a template and then you would just reuse that. Use that template next time you created a project. A lot of the time, I just like pick a project I like and I do a save as. You can also just copy and paste. You can copy and paste slides. You can go into your master slides and copy and paste your master slides. You can copy and paste the elements. Another blessing with Storyline is that it's really copy and paste friendly. Oh, captions for my presentation. I had captions to my presentation in PowerPoint. Let me go back. It's the newest version of PowerPoint. When you go to slideshow, there's an option here. I know my screen's kind of big. It says always use subtitles. Check that or uncheck it. It does use the internet connection, so they crapped out for a minute. But permanent, I don't know where the word permanent came from. But they work pretty well, and they also have punctuation, and it's nice for a live presentation. It's live subtitles are getting much better for presentations. Google Slides does live subtitles as well. Permanent is permanent, yeah. Sometimes I talk too fast, and captions and subtitles don't care for my pronunciation. Yeah, Teresa, I made a point of keeping my window smaller so those subtitles would keep on working. I feel like they can be distracting to attendees. But I think the upside is a pretty good upside where if someone's in a noisy place and these subtitles now do work pretty good, it can be helpful for someone following along. I've started watching captions on all TV now for like the last year, so ever since we had a baby. So now we're really hooked on captions on TV, and I can't even watch TV without captions anymore. So I guess I should do the same favor for other people that need captions or do have disabilities that might be affected by a webinar experience where there's no captions. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.